Ever since I was a child, nothing fascinated me more than the mystical art of the arcane. Just the thought of wielding supernatural power, of bending reality with mere words, sent shivers down my spine. Wasn't it wondrous? With a flick of the wrist, flames could erupt from thin air. With a chant, trees could be cleaved in two. A soft hum could summon rain from clear skies, and a gentle glow could chase away the deepest darkness. Every time I witnessed magic, no matter how simple, I was filled with awe. My eyes would widen, my breath would hitch, and my heart would race with a single repeating thought. I can't wait. I can't wait. In the Eastern Kingdom, every child underwent the awakening at the age of 10, a sacred rite held at the magic tower in the capital. Once awakened, they could begin their journey as magic users. And me? I didn't just want to awaken. I wanted to soar. I, Lewis Griffith, would rise to the rank of mage. No, Grand Mage ***. That was my dream. That was my destiny. Unlike the other children in my rural village, who wasted their days playing aimlessly, I devoted myself to study. While they chased butterflies, I chased knowledge. While they played hide and seek, I hid in the local library, devouring every book on magic I could find. Books were rare in our village, it was mostly farmland and granaries, but by royal decree every town, no matter how small, had at least one public library. I practically lived in hours. Soon, everyone began to notice. Lewis is a genius, they said. He'll go far. I believed it too. No one my age loved magic more than I did. And with love came purpose, and purpose power. I often spoke to myself as I read through complex spell theories, scrawling notes late into the night. Soon the whole kingdom, no the world, will know the name Lewis Griffith, Grand Mage of the Eastern Kingdom. Most of the children didn't understand me. I was too focused, too strange. I preferred the silent company of ancient texts over noisy games. I had no friends. But it didn't matter. Magic was my companion. My everything. Then, the day finally came. I turned 10. The entire village gathered to see me off. Their cheers rang in my ears as I boarded the wagon to Zurich, the capital. Show 'em what you're made of, Lewis. Let those noble bastards know even a village boy can become a mage. Good luck, jerk. I hope you at least awaken. Ha! As if I needed luck. Awakening was inevitable. My future was set in stone. My parents, despite being magicless themselves, supported me with everything they had. My mother's warm smile, my father's firm nod, they gave me strength as we made our journey. During the ride, I reread the few remaining books I hadn't yet memorized. I had long exhausted the library's collection. Just you wait, I muttered. Once I awaken, they'll all see. I imagined the ceremony countless times, what grade of mana core I'd form, what kind of talent I'd possess. My heart fluttered with anticipation. When we arrived, I underwent the procedures without hesitation. I placed my hand on the crystal sphere. I stepped into the ritual circle. They even took a strand of my hair. I wasn't nervous. I was prepared. I had read everything there was to know. Finally, we waited in the results chamber. My parents sat beside me, tense but hopeful. The analyst scribbled quietly, frowning slightly as he reviewed my test sheets. I watched him, waiting for the moment he would gasp, stunned by my sheer potential. That had to be it. He was speechless, overwhelmed by my genius. Right? He cleared his throat, looked up at my parents, and spoke. I'm very sorry, but it appears your son Lewis Griffith is inept. The words struck me harder than any blow ever could. They echoed. Again. And again. Inept? I blinked. My mouth opened, but no words came out. Yeah? The analyst's words landed like a bombshell, but my mind refused to process them. What do you mean, inept? I stammered, staring at him as if he'd lost his mind. His tone remained composed, clinical. Your son is unable to form a mana core. He possesses no innate mana whatsoever. I'm afraid, he will never be able to use magic. No. That couldn't be right. Me? Inept? What a ridiculous joke. Sure, inept individuals existed. Even my own parents were among them. But I wasn't like them. I was different. I was destined for magic. Right? I'm sorry, Lewis. We tried to warn you so many times, but you wouldn't listen. My mother's gentle voice quivered as she reached out to comfort me, but her words only deepened the growing pit in my chest. Magic power is usually inherited, my father added with a sigh, his rough hand gripping my shoulder. And our families never had it. You're our son, Lewis. This was always likely. So that was it. My grand dream, my identity, collapsed in that small analyst's office. Lewis Griffith, the future Grand Mage, died that day. The only thing grand about me was the lineage of powerlessness I had been born into. I would never summon fire with a snap of my fingers. Never stir the wind or summon even a single droplet of water. I was inept. We returned to our village that very evening. The same village I had left behind with pride and ambition, now greeted me with shame. I dreaded seeing the faces I once looked down on, the people I arrogantly dismissed. Is this punishment? I whispered to myself bitterly. I expected ridicule. I expected mockery. But instead, oh that? Yeah, we kind of always knew, someone said casually when we arrived. What? They knew? How? Your parents are both inept. Most of us here are. It wasn't hard to guess. If they knew the odds were stacked against me, then why did they cheer me on? Why encourage me so passionately? Did you all want to humiliate me that badly? I snapped, my pride lashing out. But the villagers just looked at me, not with scorn, but with kindness. You didn't become the genius mage you dreamed of, one of them said with a soft smile, but why would we mock you for something none of us could do either? Their words struck deeper than any insult ever could. It would have been nice, you know, to see you fulfill that dream. That's why we believed in you. My heart swelled with something unfamiliar, warm and aching. Lewis, you tried. You gave everything. Even if you couldn't cast magic, you're still our pride. I couldn't hold it back anymore. The tears I had fought so hard to suppress burst forth, and I wept. Truly wept, for the first time in years. I don't know how long I cried. But when I finally opened my eyes, I saw the villagers surrounding me. Their smiles held no mockery, only encouragement. Lewis Griffith, the old librarian, called out with a grin, "Don't tell me this is the end?" "Oi, what about all the spells I showed you, huh?" The farmer chimed in, laughing. "Don't let them go to waste. The name Lewis Griffith still has a destiny, right?" In that moment, I understood what that warm feeling in my chest was. Hope. I wiped my tears and stood tall, raising my voice for all to hear. Of course not. Everyone fell silent, watching me. If I can't be a grand mage, then I'll become something else. I won't let my knowledge go to waste. The villagers nodded. I still love magic. I'll keep learning, keep studying. Even if I can't use it, I'll make sure no one in this world understands it better than I do. That day, my dream changed. Lewis Griffith will be known throughout the land, not as a mage, but as the great sage. Years passed, and I kept my promise. I became the most renowned scholar in magical history. I developed theories, pioneered schools of thought, and taught generations of mages across the kingdom. Kings, nobles, even grand mages, none dared deny my legacy. Some of my work was shared with the world. Other parts I kept hidden. Too revolutionary, too dangerous for the world to comprehend. I left them behind for someone worthy to discover. I had achieved greatness, more than I ever imagined as a child. Yet as I lay on my deathbed, surrounded by royalty, friends, family, and students, something still felt missing. A quiet emptiness I had buried long ago now returned. I never wanted greatness. I never cared for fame. All I ever wanted was to cast one spell. To feel fire on my fingertip. To summon a breeze, or a drop of rain. Just once. As my vision dimmed, and the world began to fade, only one word lingered on my lips.
Hey, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy our audiobooks, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, feel free to share your review in the comments section below.
Darkness. That was all I could feel. A seemingly endless void of nothingness enveloped me as I floated in it, wondering what had happened to me after I closed my eyes in death. Is this what death is like? Suddenly, cutting through the darkness was an inexplicable light. The glowing illumination slowly covered everything, filling the void space with beauty. As I feasted my eyes on the sparkles all around me, I found myself fading away into unconsciousness, something I didn't think would be possible since I was already dead. What is happening? Push, milady. A voice startled me, causing me to try opening my eyes. I tried, but I felt something heavy surround me, making me shut it back tightly. Where am I? Warherf. A muffled scream sounded, making me startled and confused still. Suddenly, I felt myself being pulled toward something. It seemed like a bright light at the end of a dark tunnel. Just what is happening to me? The pain screams continued as I gravitated more to the light point. The entire area around me felt like a tight space, warm and soft. I felt squishy liquid around me, making me ponder on what I could actually be experiencing. I knew I was dead just a few moments ago, so how could I be here? Could this be? Hey! This powerful scream propelled me further to the light, and I felt something grab me and pull me even further away from the squishy room I was in. The light became brighter until I left the darkness entirely behind and was brought into a new world. I winced, due to the intensely bright surrounding. It was as though I was seeing it for the first time. Not only that, but my skin felt very irritable, because of the feel of the cool wind touching me when I had been used to the warmth and squishiness of my previous abode. One thing was sure. I wasn't dead. Hold on, what is this? Could it be? Now opening my eyes slowly, I looked around me to better understand the situation. My blurry eyes became clearer with time and I could see distorted images of a woman clothed in white, carrying me gently. Congratulations, it's a baby boy. What was she talking about? I glanced by my side and saw another woman clad in white. She looked at me adorably, making my disoriented mind begin to draw conclusions. The white-clothed woman passed me on to someone who lay on a bed. I saw her weak face and tired smile as she looked at me with the greatest expression of affection I could ever remember. My baby boy, she spoke, taking me from the previous woman. As I was wrapped around in her arms, covered with neatly woven fabrics which kept me warm, I finally understood. This woman was my mother. The women clothed in white were her handmaidens who helped her in her childbirth. And I? Well, I was the child. That's right. Even though I never thought such a thing was possible, especially for someone like me who couldn't use magic, it appeared I had been proven wrong. Right here and now in this room. I have been reincarnated as a baby. A few days passed since I was given birth to. My mother never ceased to amaze me, always cuddling me and being by my side for as long as I was awake. Even when I slept, her handmaidens watched me. Even though I didn't quite understand the language everyone used, by observing their gestures and expressions, I got a rough idea. It's slightly different from what I'm used to, but it's close, I reasoned. It wouldn't take me too long to fully internalize the changes made, especially with Mother's sweet bedtime stories. I was unable to step foot outside the room I usually stayed in though. Trapped and with nothing else to do, boredom became my new friend. Due to my lack of mobility in my immature form, I could only endure the humiliating confinement. Well, it wasn't all bad. My cradle looked luxurious enough. Laying on my back in the large cot, I felt very comfortable. It was different from the wooden contraption made by my previous parents. The room also looked elegantly designed and large. My family must be well off, I thought to myself. My mother, who watched me with dedication, finally fell asleep, allowing me to open my eyes and cease my pretense. The handmaidens had left us alone as per the orders of my mother, who wanted some alone time with her cute and adorable baby, aka me. Wearing a soft cotton dress, I stared at the ceiling and thought deeply. What could have caused such a thing? I had been reborn with my memories intact. This was something I never deemed possible. If it was something that happened to others, surely it would have been discovered by now. After all, they would have applied their past knowledge in phenomenal ways. However, such a thing never happened. Despite how hard I tried, all my thoughts ended in futility, as I couldn't decipher the cause of my reincarnation. As an intelligent mind who pursued knowledge, I could never be satisfied with a convenient answer like coincidence, but seeing as I couldn't figure out the reason for the strange occurrence, I decided to shelf the thought and focus on another important factor. Magic. In this life, am I inept as well? A small smile formed on my face as my body throbbed nervously. Whether or not I could actually practice magic and once again dedicate myself to it, I had to find out now. I heaved, closing my eyes in concentration. In the past, one awakened when they turned 10 years old. I went through the same process as well. However, thanks to my research and contributions to the world of magic, I found a way to figure out the power hidden within an individual, even if it was a day after birth. Using a process similar to awakening, a person could quicken the latent mana within them by injecting external mana into their body. Of course, it would take some time for the mana core to form. But if one used this procedure at an early age, by the age of 5, a mana core would have been formed already. This made the effort half of what it took in the past, and I was highly praised for this discovery in the past. The problem was that this method only applied to those who had latent mana within them. Inepts, such as me, were unable to use this procedure to form a mana core. In the end, it all depends on whether a person is born with the potential to wield magic or not. That's enough of that. I won't know until I try. Meditating within my cot, I tried becoming one with my body, feeling every breath I made and my little movements. Slowly, I could feel something move within me. Blood vessels, internal organs, what else? My pores opened up and sweat came out. This is harder than I thought.
Of course it would be.
I only postulated this in theory. Since I was inept, I never used this method on myself, to begin with. Still, no one knew of the process more than me. I wasn't going to give in now.
Gas.
My eyes sprang open as I breathed heavily. I tried controlling the sounds of my gasps so I wouldn't wake my mother. My body ached slightly, and I knew why. The method was a little painful, especially since I was performing it on myself.
But I did it.
After undergoing the process myself, I knew the results.
So that's it, huh? I am.
Magic, the ability to bend the laws of the world and perform supernatural feats. Using the energy which flows within one's body called mana, an individual could create certain things and cause amazing occurrences. However, in this world, not everyone can use magic. This is because a person needs to have a mana core to control the mana within. This mana becomes activated and transformed into magic by using spells. Mana cores are made by condensing the little fragments of mana within a person. The more a person grows, the higher the mana becomes. That is why a child had to turn 10 before they could awaken and form their cores. But what happens to those with no mana, to begin with? They can never hope to make a mana core and are labeled inepts. I was one of those in my past life.
But now?
It looks like that has changed, I mumbled to myself in my babyish language. The good news was that I was not inept in this life. I had mana, therefore I would be able to form a mana core and use magic. Then why wasn't I overjoyed and immensely excited by this development? Well, that was because of the not-so-good news. I had barely enough mana to qualify as a non-inept, or even become a potential magic user. What's with this low amount? Are these actually all the mana particles I have? I know I'm barely a week old, but this is just too low. I had a low mana count and it was too low. This wouldn't even be up to 1/10 of an average baby.
Wrong. Wrong. Wrong.
I groaned internally. Since I reincarnated, wasn't I supposed to be blessed with some sort of special power or cheat ability? I was meant to possess nearly limitless mana, yet here I was again getting the short end of the straw. Well, there's no use complaining now. At least I have some mana. With even this, practicing magic should be doable. A wide smile slowly formed on my face. Even though I was a little disappointed, greatly disappointed in my very little talent, I was still very happy. I have mana now. Yes. In my past life, I had wished for even the tiniest amount of mana to perform magic just once. It appeared my prayers were finally answered. That's right. Even with this, I should finally be able to do it. I became a great sage that revolutionized the world of magic, yet I never used any for myself. This time, all the knowledge I stacked up and built, I would finally be able to apply them myself. I was no longer interested in being a grand mage or whatever. I had enough fame and prestige to last me 2 lifetimes. What I desired at the moment was to simply enjoy the practice of the magic I had immersed myself in. Perhaps this was my reward for the diligent effort I put in magic. I can't wait until I'm older. The night quickly fell, and the darkness crept in. I lay in my cot, directly stationed at the bedside of my mother. Apparently, she was the only parent at home. I had not seen my dad or even heard anyone talk about him since I was born. I could never escape her watchful gaze. While everyone was asleep, I remained awake, contemplating various things excitedly. What should I try first? This or that? Maybe that other one, or could I just do that instead? Creak. Suddenly, I heard a creaking sound. It appears the door to our room was being opened slightly. Who could it be? My mom had clearly forbidden anyone from entering our private space unless she called for them. I have a bad feeling about this. I quickly shut my eyes and pretended to be fast asleep. Thanks to the darkness, the intruder couldn't see my partly opened eyes, watching them as they slowly approached our location. Crap. I can't see them well. I grumbled. The effects of the darkness hindered me too. Suddenly, I noticed something the stranger held which made my eyes nearly pop out of their sockets. The object had a slight glow in the darkness, reflecting on its surface with a shiny glint. That's a knife? He picked up his knife, still maintaining decorum as he nearly reached my mother's bedside. It was well hidden, and not too large. This person, whoever he was a professional. Who is he after? My mother? Or Judging from the trajectory of his movements since he entered and the direction his face pointed in, he appeared to be coming toward me. The knife he held was also small, and from the glint it had, it was extremely sharp. It finally dawned on me that I was the target. Why? I was only born a few days ago. What could I have possibly done to incur the attention of a killer? Nothing came to mind. Perhaps someone discovered I had reincarnated and wanted me dead. Or perhaps this was why no one who reincarnated ever appeared. Maybe they were killed before they had a chance to grow up. I have to stop with all these thoughts. I quickly snapped back to reality. Having useless theories wouldn't solve anything at the moment. There was only the certainty that he wanted to do me in. Whatever reasons he had were merely secondary. There's no way I'm going to die here. I was trapped in my cot, unable to do anything as the harmful baby I am. Or so you would think. This will be my first time doing this, but I suppose I have no choice. Using one of the secret discoveries I never revealed to the rest of the world, this was the only way I could stand even the tiniest chance in this desperate situation. Spellcraft, Stage 1. This was going to take quite a toll on me, but there was no other way to do this. Spellcraft, one of the secret discoveries I made without revealing its mechanics to people. Just as it would take a person's mana core to regulate mana which could be manifested as magic through spells, so also this method allowed a person to cast spells, but not necessarily with a mana core. Humans have limited mana, and so the casting of spells as well as its quality would be heavily limited to their level of mana. But, what if I told you that there was another way? And that method is the only way I can survive this night if I pull this off. Stage 1. Dispersal. My skin tingled as I concentrated on dispersing the little amounts of mana floating within my body. It felt like countless needles poked my skin as mana leaked out of my pores, a strange new sensation I had never experienced in my past life. Endure it, Lewis, endure it. I gritted my imaginary teeth. The pain was unbearable for my little frame, and I felt like I would pass out from the strain, but I endured it, because if I didn't, I was going to die. My focus was no longer on the assassin, and I couldn't afford to open my eyes lest distraction befall me and I lose concentration. That would be fatal in this case. From my calculations, it will take another 10 seconds before he concluded his act. If that was the case, I still had little time to complete the spell. After dispersing my frugal amount of mana outside of my body, the next stage followed. Stage 2, Attraction. The surrounding mana slowly began to gravitate toward me. It was no easy task since the quality of my mana was very small and unrefined, but through concentration, I was able to draw a small quantity to my small frame. Stage 3. Convergence. The two different types of mana slowly mixed, becoming one in an instant. They were very small particles, therefore invisible to the ordinary eyes. Even the assassin wouldn't be able to sense what was happening unless he used magic as well. Seeing as he brought a blade, instead of using magic to conclude the job, he was avoiding its use. That made my work easier. From this point on, I have to hurry. Because there were only 5 seconds left. Stage 4. Transformation. This was when the magic truly happened, and since I needed a spell to activate it, I had the perfect one to use. A spell that didn't use up much mana, was fast and efficient, able to incapacitate my killer in an instant and ensure my safety. A spell such as that would have to be customized by me. Imagine it, Lewis. Imagine. My thoughts instantly produced the perfect spell to use. 3 seconds left. I molded my mana, which was mixed with that of the surrounding. Drawing all my mana particles together, they shone dimly as they became evident. 2 seconds left. The assassin must have noticed it by now, so I couldn't give him any more time to react. Using the moisture of the air, I created ice, freezing it with the little mana I had dispersed while utilizing the force of the wind to serve as a propeller. 1 second left. Mini ice bullet. I opened my eyes instantly to see the killer's knife nearing my throat. Due to my magic, there was a slight glow in the room, allowing me to see the man a little more clearly. He had a hood on, preventing me from knowing his identity. However, I didn't need that at the moment. All that mattered was my survival. Aiming for the point that would deal the most damage, I pinpointed his temple and launched my highly condensed ice bullet, which was strengthened with all the mana I could muster and collect from the surrounding. Stage 5. Activate. FWSHHHH. In an instant, the bullet was sent flying, rotating due to the influence of the wind as it darted straight for the man's forehead. I heard the squishy sound of tearing flesh and the cracking sound of a bone as the killer's forehead was pierced. Within a moment, the bullet drilled through the stranger's forehead and passed out of his head in a decisive hit. The knife he held so tightly fell to my side as his body staggered and flailed about before collapsing on the ground. My eyes grew tired at this point, and I could not confirm his death. If he was still miraculously alive after that attack, then I was screwed. After all, I had used up the last of my strength. My eyes were forcefully shut by waves of nausea and exhaustion that permeated my childish body. Lingering sensations of pain remained. However, even as I drifted off to unconsciousness, a bottomless feeling of happiness and fulfillment rushed through me. After all, at that moment, I had done what I always dreamt of my whole life.
I did it.
I used magic. And then everything went dark. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to have unlimited power? The endless potential a person could have if they weren't limited by their bodies. I thought about it every day in my previous life. I was born inept, with no aptitude for the thing I craved the most, so as a researcher, I tried looking for ways to combat the very injustice that was dealt to me. It was impossible though. Just like the law of gravity and motion, it is trite that for magic to occur, there must be mana. To use mana, one must possess a degree of it. As such, no inept person could ever use magic, nor even activate a magic tool or artifact, since they required the injection of mana to work. But, I discovered the next best thing. If one had even the tiniest fraction of mana, they could achieve even far greater feats than their current limits. By using the surrounding mana through the attraction of your own mana, you could make even more powerful and efficient magic than normal. I dubbed this technique SPLLCRAFT, one of my most coveted and prized magic inventions. Erg! I groaned as my eyes slowly opened. I felt my ears ringing loudly, and my entire body aching. I could hardly move my body, making me wonder what caused such an absurdity. He's awake, milady. I heard someone yell. Their voices sounded feminine, making me even more confused. I never got married or had any women in my home. Plus, my mind was so sharp that I would recognize the voice if I knew the owner. Yet, I didn't know who was speaking. What's going on? My baby, oh my baby. I heard another woman say. My eyes were still blurry, so I couldn't see her face clearly. In fact, my entire head was buzzing and foggy. It felt like I was forgetting something important, but I couldn't point it out clearly. I blinked and struggled to try regaining my sight and stop the loud ringing in my ears. Even though my body wasn't moving as I wanted it to, I had to focus and get a grip. Upon opening my eyes, I could see clearer. From my position, it appeared I was lying on a bed and the strange woman who called me her baby was looking at me with tears in her eyes. She looked awfully attractive, but her sad face nearly ached my heart. Why is she looking at me with those eyes? Who is this beauty? I asked myself. Instantly, I felt a little shame wash over me. If I had married, she was young enough to be my daughter, yet what was I thinking? Suddenly, the woman stretched forth her hands toward me in an attempt to lift me. I felt puzzled, seeing such an action. I tried protesting, but my lips wouldn't respond. No, it felt like I was not even capable of speech yet. Instead of hearing my voice, I heard a baby mumbling. Who the hell is that? As her hands touched my back, I felt a warm tingle on my skin. It felt good. But the strange thing about this was that her hands seemed to touch a wide area in my back, but before I fully grasped the situation, I slowly felt myself being pulled up. What the hell? My mind rang. Ah, you're safe, my beautiful baby boy. The woman cried in laughter as she drew me close to her bosom. Upon hearing those words, a sharp sensation seared through my brain, and slowly all the confusion I had vanished instantly. The truth sunk in, as well as the memories of the past couple of days I had spent in my new form. A smile formed on my face when I thought of the events of the previous night, as well as the absolute truth that governed my life at the moment. I had been reincarnated. A few days passed after the incident, and to be honest, my time after that was very eventful. Even though I realized that my family was important and rich, I didn't know to what extent, until after the deed had been done. Apparently, my parents are high-ranking nobles in this empire, wherever this was, making me a very important figure, even as a baby. The reason I hadn't yet seen my father was due to his busy life in the capital, and it appeared he wasn't going to be coming home anytime soon. As for the most puzzling part, the assassin, it turned out had disguised himself as a servant and was able to blend in for weeks unnoticed, waiting for the household to let their guards down before making his move. I often wondered why the assassin didn't use magic to finish me off, but after spending the rest of my days actively investigating for my baby's cot or my mother's very comfortable laps, I discovered a mechanism in the house. A magic detection artifact. I hadn't noticed it when I first reincarnated, since I was occupied with more important things, plus the model looked very different from the one I was used to. However, when I started my active investigation, I found it. Anti-magic is only a theory, since all magic comes from mana and involves various formulas to cast. Therefore, to protect their household from dangerous magic users, magic detection artifacts were made. Simply put, they allowed the user to detect the use of magic within their immediate vicinity. Think of it like a fire alarm. So, if anyone were to use magic in the vicinity, it had to be sanctioned. Unauthorized use of magic would be instantly detected and the culprit would be apprehended instantly. The assassin approached me with a knife to finish his job in order to avoid the detection of magic. However, the alarm still rang, and that was because of me. I remember using magic to kill that man, and while the rush and thrill remained with me even till this moment, I couldn't possibly replicate it again. Doing so recklessly would cause the alarm to ring and I would be found out. Even now, the maids and servants look at me with peculiar and curious expressions. My mother often mentioned how it was a miracle that they found the dead body of the assassin right next to my cot and wondered what could have happened. I could only imagine the shock on their faces if they realized that it was a seemingly harmless, barely a week-old baby that drilled the hole they found in the corpse of the man. But that would never happen. So far, I had escaped suspicion because it wasn't reasonable that I could do such a thing in the first place. So, everyone chalked it down to an act of God. Plus, ever since that night I had been put under 24/7 surveillance. My freedom had ended up being further restricted. However, that was no issue for me. Why? Because being stationary was exactly what I needed at the moment. It's time to begin forming my core. On this day, I hereby name thee Jared of the House of Leonard Alphonse Sereth. Yep, you heard that right. At this moment, I'm currently at the cathedral within my family's estate. The pews are well arranged, and my dearest mother, being the only parent around to witness this historic day, is standing on the altar, holding me in her bosom. The priest was facing me directly, wearing his blindingly white robe and golden scarf. Two of his assistants, who bore an uncanny resemblance with each other, stood a couple of distance behind him, while staring at the clergyman with hope and adoration in their eyes. As for the audience, many strangers were currently piercing me with their gaze. One would think that I would be used to attention, given the nature of my past life. However, as a baby who was just 2 weeks old, it was a little nerve-wracking. Why? Because in the presence of so many witnesses, this priest was about to perform something known as the quickening ceremony, where he would inject his mana into me and activate my latent mana. Yes, it's a method I developed in the past to help form a mana core early. It has received a lot of popularity, and even in this age, it appeared that they still use this method, though it has now become an elaborate event. Still, the reason I'm so nervous is because of one crucial fact. I have already quickened myself. Let's rewind a bit. I began forming my mana core 10 days after I was born, some days after the whole attempted assassination issue. Of course, since I was stuck and constantly watched, I had to pass the time. Usually, after a child receives a quickening, it takes them a few years for their mana core to develop. This is because, though the latent mana has become active, they automatically begin to converge in a single spot to become a core within a magic user's body. Babies, and even little children, who have no experience in sensing their mana or directing the flow, have to wait for years while things take their natural course, and after this occurs, they awaken. The usual time for a core to fully form is 5 years, though I have heard cases of geniuses who formed theirs at 4, even 3 years old. How scary. I envied those lucky chumps. Hee, but now it's my turn to shine. I grinned internally. You see, I had already awakened mere days after my birth, way faster than most children, and I also possessed the ability to sense my mana and direct the flow since I had my awareness intact. Plus, I am crazy smart. Though my mana capacities seemed to barely qualify, there didn't seem to be too much of a problem. If I began guiding my mana particles to form a core myself, without waiting for them to gather on their own, that meant my speed would be way more than others. I might not have talent, but by using this method, I won't be left behind. So, at 10 days old, I began my first trial.
It was difficult.
It was hard enough sensing the little fragments of mana that dwelled within my body, but gathering them in a single spot was another thing entirely. For a child, whose mental strength was incomparable to an adult's, it took quite a monstrous amount of concentration to gather 10 particles in an hour. When considering the fact that there are nearly infinite number of particles within a person's body, and it takes a minimum of 100,000 to form a stable core, 10 particles an hour was a far cry from what I had in mind. Even in this new life, it appeared that life would not be easy for me. Still, I persevered. On my first day, I managed to gather 50 particles before losing strength and drifting to sleep. My second day was better since I had somewhat gotten the hang of things.
70,
Not bad, not bad. I thought to myself, smiling excitedly. It seemed the more I practiced gathering daily, the more I improved. By the third day, I was already able to gather 120 particles, nearly 2 times the amount of the previous day. At this rate, maybe. However, my hopeful thoughts were dashed by the sudden realization I had after hearing the conversation my mother had with her handmaidens. Is everything set for tomorrow?
Tomorrow?
I had no idea there was anything special going on during that time. Yes, milady. The guests will be arriving very early, as stated in their letters, but we are nearly done with all the preparations. One of the maids answered her.
Guests?
Now I was even more confused. What in the blazes is going on? Why doesn't anyone tell me anything? Oh wait. I grumbled internally, hoping someone would shed more light on the commotion. Tomorrow is my baby's naming ceremony. I can't wait till I hear my sweet child's name for the first time. My mother finally said, beaming with pride and excitement.
Yeah.
I let out with my baby voice. Apparently, a baby was supposed to undergo a naming ceremony 2 weeks after birth. I didn't know anything of the sort prior to my mother mentioning it. Perhaps it was because of my commoner heritage in my past life, where no such practices were held. Noble culture differed from that of the masses, after all. But if that was the case, wouldn't I have noticed it at later points in my life? I had many noble friends, after all. And a lot of them had children, yet I never saw anything of the sort. Welp, it could have been as a result of my fixation on magic that I failed to notice such details. I laughed in embarrassment. Or, the more reasonable option would be that it was a new trend in whatever era I was reincarnated into. Of course, based on the slight difference in the language everyone spoke, plus the dates I saw around, as well as the books my mother read to me, I already deduced that quite a few hundred years had passed since my death. 528 years to be exact. During that time, quite a lot had changed, such as the magic detecting tool I saw in my parents' room. It looked more advanced than what I knew of in the past. Since many things weren't the same as what I knew, the naming ceremony was no exception. Now that I think of it, I don't even have a name yet. Everyone just calls me the young master, and my mom calls me her baby. It won't be bad getting a proper name, I had thought to myself with a bit of anticipation. How could I have known things would turn out this way? A quickening ceremony after hearing my name. How was I to get out of this predicament? This boy shall be the pride and joy of the Duke household of Leonard Alphonse Sereth. Thus, as the child Jared is brought forth, I shall perform the quickening ceremony.
The priest said. Crap. Oh crap.
My mother smiled, giggling excitedly under her breath as she took a few steps forward. As her body swerved elegantly while approaching the priest, my mind went into overdrive as I began to think of ways in which I could escape from my predicament. If he finds out I have already been quickened, what's going to happen then? Most likely, I would be labeled as a genius or something, and the news would eventually reach far and wide. As one who nearly got assassinated a while back, such attention was not something I desired at the moment. Until I'm old enough to protect myself. I can't let anyone know about my secrets. The priest brought his hands closer to me while giving me a happy smile. He must have had good intentions, but from my perspective, he appeared to be a personification of evil. No, stay away, stop it. I wailed internally. Don't worry, young Jared. It won't hurt at all. The priest spoke in a soothing tone, stretching his hands towards me. He must have sensed my unease and thought of what to say in order to console me. This man was a liar. As one who invented the technique, I know it is painful. Why would such an esteemed man of such status tell a lie? I don't trust him. Of course, I knew this was just my irrational mind speaking. He didn't seem in any way malevolent. Plus, my parents would never employ someone with suspicious intentions to perform such an important ceremony, especially after my attempted assassination. I felt a vibrating sensation as the priest placed his hands on my body. My skin tingled, and I could somewhat sense the faint mana on his palm. Gulp. There was nothing I could do, so I merely waited while accepting my fate. Suddenly, an idea sparked into my head. Yes. That's it. As the priest began materializing his mana, preparing to insert it into my body, a small smile formed on my face. I closed my eyes and became in touch with my body, as well as the little mana particles within it. Once he inserts his mana, my particles will be in a state of excitement for a moment. This will allow me to absorb more particles and form my core faster. I beamed. There was nothing I could do to hide the fact that I had already been quickened, but at least I could obtain some benefits from this priest inserting his mana into me. Be quickened, little one, and obtain the power of mana. ZTTTZZZZZZ. My body buzzed as I felt the strange mana entering my very being. As expected, My particles glowed brighter and became larger in mass. Thanks for the meal. Instantly, I began attracting the excited particles into the spot where my core was forming. The tiny light fragments rapidly rushed toward the spot, nearly flustering me.
Incredible.
To think it would be this effective. I beamed internally. I kept doing the best I could to concentrate the particles and draw all the particles into the position of my forming core. 50 particles. 70 particles. 130 particles. 200 particles.
300. 450. 540. 650.
The particles kept rushing toward my core, all within minutes. I surpassed what I would normally be able to achieve in an entire day within mere minutes. As expected, the merits of meditation even during this ceremony were worth it. The priest's faint glow of mana suddenly ceased, and he removed his hands from my body. I could feel his eyes looking at me with surprise, but I kept mine shut to avoid any scary gaze I would find.
Ah, here it comes. I'm busted.
The quickening is successful. The priest suddenly remarked. Your child has mana. Congratulations, milady.
Yeah.
I was stunned by the statement of the priest, but before I had any chance to think this through, my head was bombarded with deafening sounds of hands clapping. The noise was so much that I was forced to open my eyes. What I saw was amazing. The whole guests present were standing, clapping their hands together and looking at me with wonder and pride in their eyes. I did see some disgruntled faces and some stoic ones, but the majority expressed genuine happiness about what had just occurred. Is the quickening ceremony that special?
I asked myself. Sniff.
Sniff, a sudden sound came from above me.
No way. Is that?
I raised my head and saw my mother's face. She had tears rolling down her cheeks as she looked at me with pride. Her joy was overflowing, appearing to be boundless. Why was she looking so excited and happy? Wasn't this just a normal ceremony among nobles? Was there something significant in this? The priest didn't even seem to notice that I had already been quickened, so there should be nothing special about this. My child, you have magic. Finally, we have a magic user in our household. My mother smiled at me, drawing me even closer to her as she hugged me. I felt a light tap on my face as her tears dropped on me. Her body trembled, and I heard more sniffs coming from her.
Oh boy.
I wasn't expecting this. Jared Leonard Alphonse Sereth has successfully been quickened, thus marks the birth of the first magic user of the Duke household in over 2 centuries. Truly, a star has been born. At this point, silence filled the hall, and the priest stepped back from the stage, leaving the middle area vacant. My mother began walking to the center, carrying me with elegance. Since I wasn't used to the new customs of these people, I merely went with the flow as a baby should. Once she reached the center of the stage, my mother tightly grasped me and raised my tiny body up, showing me to everyone present. It felt weird, looking at everyone present from a high pedestal and being lifted by my mother's slender arms. I was a little embarrassed. Cheers to my beloved son, the pride and joy of the Leonard household. Cheers to Jared Leonard,
she declared.
Instantly, the audience gave a roaring response, nearly blowing my eardrums. Cheers to Jared Leonard. And so, held up in the air by my mother, watched by the guests, maids and priest, even I became overwhelmed with emotion. Even though I knew it was impossible, my body moved without prior thoughts in order to render my gratitude to everyone present.
Thank you, everyone. I'm happy you came. Thanks, priest.
I'm sorry I ever doubted you. Thank you, Mom, for always being with me. Thank you, maids, for making life easy for me. And thank you, universe, for allowing me to be reborn. Things will definitely be different this time. With quivering lips, my mouth flung open, and words came out to address everyone that had moved my heart. Gengu Geijiwan. Thank you, everyone. My loud baby voice echoed across the cathedral, and for a moment everyone was stunned by my unintelligible words, myself included. Oof, what did I expect to sound like? My face turned red with embarrassment as I wished the earth could swallow me at that moment. However, the response of everyone made me feel the shame even more.
Yep, that's right.
They all said,
"Oh woo."
7 years later. I'm nearly there, just a little more. My body shook a little more than expected, vibrating at every turn. Sweat covered my skin as I winced and groaned while maintaining my meditative stance. As I absorbed and condensed the last portion of the essential particles I needed, I was already beginning to feel it.
I was close.
SHWWUUU. White colors were lifting off of me, and I began to feel a warm aura envelop me. My stomach felt hot, and my body was in an excited state, ready to change forever. It's here. My eyes widened as I doubled my diligent concentration on the formation that was nearly complete.
5 more. 3 more, 1 more.
Finally, the final portion of energy entered the cluster of particles, and a mana core was born.
Har ea ia.
I finally wheezed in relief, crashing to the ground. My exhausted body could hardly move, but I realized that this was only temporary. After all, I had been going about this for nearly 5 hours non-stop. I needed to form it today.
Hee 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 ha 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 ha.
My laughter echoed throughout the large room where I was in. While I was lying on the ground, with nothing better to do than recover my strength, I glanced across my chambers. It was big, too big for a 7-year-old. Even in my past life, I didn't use such a large space for sleeping purposes. Well, to be fair, I was never a materialist, since I was so devoted to my studies and passion. My acquaintances often pushed me to enjoy more of life. Perhaps I should have listened. Well, it looks like whether I like it or not, that's the reality I live in now. I was literally swimming in luxury. Since years past, the paranoia of my mother had slowly died down. I couldn't still be found sleeping in my mother's chambers at 7, so this had to be arranged. Of course, this room was directly beside hers, so she was fond of dropping by time and time again. Fortunately, she's on a trip today, that's why I could meditate for so long. My mother, Annabelle, was quite the lively woman. While I found her strange at first, I grew to accept her warmth, kindness, and overwhelming personality. I shall not make any comments concerning my earlier days as a baby. I did some things I am not proud of. As for my father, I had only seen him on a few occasions, nothing too special or fancy. Unlike my mother, Damien had a more intimidating aura surrounding him. Since he was a duke, one of the only 4 nobles granted titles of such rank, his presence had much relevance. Apparently, my mother was from a magic user household, which was why he married her in the first place. Also, he could birth an heir who possessed magic. How amusing. It appeared that arranged marriages based on the importance of magic and political standings had still not changed after so long had passed. I totally felt indifferent about him, though he showed me his undivided attention whenever he visited home, asking about my studies and affairs. I could tell that it was only because I had mana coursing through my body. Still, I didn't despise him for it. In such a world where magic was vastly important, it was a given that nobles possessed it. For a duke household not to have any magic users for over 2 centuries, it amazed me how they could still maintain their standing. Their contribution to the empire must be indispensable. That must be why Damien doesn't stay at home often. He's working quite hard. I thought, forgiving him for neglecting his family. Family matters aside, there was one thing that bothered me the most. It took me 7 years to form a core. A whole 7 years.
Unbelievable. I whispered.
I knew my talent in magic was nearly 0, and my mana was one that barely qualified me to practice magic, but I wasn't expecting it to be this bad. An average child formed their mana core at 5 years old after using the quickening technique. Yet, I even started much earlier than anyone in forming my mana core, and dedicated so much time to condensing the mana particles myself. This should have increased my speed by 3-fold at least. Yet, to think I would be a late awakened. I don't even want to think about what would have happened if I didn't personally converge my mana particles and just waited for the core to form on its own, I muttered. I would already be an adult by the time I awakened. That's how bad it was. It got to a point where my parents were worried about me, and rumors even went around about how my quickening ceremony was false. People thought the priest made an error in thinking I had mana, since my core hadn't formed. But since the priest was very reliable, and my mother's faith in me didn't waver, the household persevered. My father became impatient at a point, but refused to give up faith in me, since I was his only child, though I wonder why he could just make another one.
Don't tell me, no way. And no way.
Jared, you've formed your magic core. Annabelle, my mother marveled as she watched me bring out a spark of fire from my palm. The surprised look on her face, coupled with the tears of joy and relief that flowed out of her eyes, made everything worthwhile. I had been waiting for her to return, hoping to welcome her with this. So, as soon as I heard the clacking sounds of the horse's hooves and the wheels of the carriage approaching the house, I rushed down to meet her. My, it seems young Master Jared missed the Duchess so much. The maids giggled as I ran past them. They were wrong though, there were only 2 things on my mind, one of which was to show off. As soon as Annabelle got down from the carriage, I greeted her with a simple fire spell, causing her to make the expression I wanted to see. Jared, my sweet baby boy, she cried, lunging toward me excitedly.
I knew this would come.
My mother grabbed me and hugged me tightly, caressing her large bosoms on my chest. Well, at this point I was pretty much used to it.
Ah, I knew it.
You're our pride and joy. Mother is so happy.
Yeah. I got it.
Now let's quickly move on to the next stage. I grumbled internally. That's right, it was finally time for the second reason I rushed down. After finally obtaining the ability to use magic by normal standards, the next thing was only natural. Start practice. And since I was the child of a noble family, having access to countless books and materials, there was one thing I needed more than those things, one thing my mother promised she would give me should I completely form my mana core.
A magic tutor.
Magic is a very complicated concept. Not only is it highly volatile, but it is also progressive. Having been gone for over 500 years, this concept has taken leaps and bounds from where I left off, making me stranded with only old information. But this would all change in a few days. As a 7-year-old child, I wasn't granted access to the main household library, since I was always watched. Since my mother realized I loved books, she made a separate library for me, filling it with easy-to-understand books that were deemed fit for my age. Of course, I easily exhausted these and demanded more tasking materials, but my stubborn mother insisted on sticking to the childish pieces of paper she called books. It was thanks to this that I couldn't progress much in my study of modern-day magic. Still, I wasn't too frustrated since I had still not formed my mana core. However, that time is over. The deal I made with my mother was finally going to take effect. Books were important, however. This deal was something that would be even better than literature. A magic user who had experience in both practice and education, capable of imparting their knowledge into others.
A magic tutor.
Finally, I was going to have one. Clack. 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 I heard the sounds of horse hooves marching on the hard ground in my family's compound. This sound distracted my reading, but awakened the curiosity I had. Are they finally here?
I thought to myself.
I looked down from my study, which I intentionally requested to be close to the window, and saw a carriage making a turn at the flower garden, close to the main gate. A broad smile formed on my face, and I closed the book I was engrossed in just seconds ago. I should go welcome them, no? Jumping from my seat, I hurriedly dashed from the room and charged straight for the main door downstairs. I didn't need to change the attire I wore, since it was already a perfectly decent one. Since a few days ago, after Annabelle sent a letter requesting for my tutor, I have been wearing presentable attires in anticipation for when they would come. I saw a few maids rushing to inform my mother of the presence of whoever descended from the carriage, but I totally ignored them. In a flash, even before my Annabelle could be told of my tutor's arrival, I was already behind the door. Let's see who it'll be. A grin formed on my face as I clasped the doorknob. Welcome to the Leonard Dash, I spoke while opening the door to see our dear guest. Suddenly, a sharp surge coursed through my body, causing it to nearly go numb.
What? This is.
My eyes bulged and every hair of my skin stood as I felt the intense pressure emanating from a single location. With all of my strength, I raised my head and looked in the direction of the person who stood before me, directly in front of the main entrance. Why you are? I managed to whisper, staring at the overwhelming figure. The man, appearing to be in his late 50s, stared at me blankly. His body was limp, and he had a somewhat skinny outlook, yet the presence he emitted was that of a well-seasoned expert. The pressure felt enough to crush me. Incredible, what a dense mana signature. I thought to myself while sweating profusely.
Are you?
Jared Leonard. The man suddenly spoke, causing me to stiffen in response. His eyes were fixated on me, narrowing them as though he was intrigued by something I wasn't aware of. Why yes, I stuttered. However, I wasn't done. No matter how incredible this person was, what he was currently doing was wrong. For him to carelessly release his magic pressure, what was he hoping to achieve? If you don't mind, could you retract your magic pressure? His eyes narrowed even more as I asked this, causing me to gulp. The man suddenly moved closer, 1 foot already past the door, and drew his face closer to me. Interesting, he mumbled, stroking his short white beard. Eek, I squeaked, feeling like an ant before him. Are you sure you're Jared Leonard? He asked me once again. I could smell his breath from our distance. It wasn't terrible, just very musty, like a combination of spicy herbs and alcohol. This time, I didn't answer. I had had enough of this man's insolence. Perhaps I had forgotten earlier, but as the son of a duke and his employer, he had no right to treat me in such a manner. Magic pressure was something magic users used to greet each other, displaying their level of power. For him to do such a thing before a 7-year-old like me, who just awakened, was extremely inappropriate. Still, I was done with words. If his language was going to be magic pressure, I was just going to give him the response he wanted. Shoo. I instantly opened my magic veins, causing my mana to leak out and generated my own magic pressure.
BKOMMMMM.
Our distinct energies clashed with each other, causing a quake across the room. I winced a little, noticing that my pressure was nothing compared to his. Still, I wasn't about to give up due to this little setback. I pushed more of my mana out to compensate, gritting my teeth as I glared at him. The man didn't even seem fazed by my pressure. From his demeanor, he wasn't even serious from what he emitted. TCH, don't look down on me. Even if I was weaker in terms of the quality of mana, it wasn't everything. The room was currently brimming with mana thanks to both of our pressures, and mine was directly clashing with his, as well as touching the surrounding mana. The conditions were perfect for SBLLCRAFD. Hold it right there. A voice suddenly interrupted my thoughts. My eyes bulged as I recognized who it was. I looked back and saw an annoyed glare on her face.
Annabelle.
The man standing before me quickly withdrew his magic pressure for some reason, leaving mine the only one evident. I turned to look at him, only to be shocked by what I saw. His intimidating aura had gone. Instead, his eyes were exhibiting an emotion that I had not long ago.
Fear.
What the hell was happening here? You've crossed the line this time, Alphonse. Annabelle, my mother growled, moving closer.
Anna, hold on, I can explain dash.
Before the man could finish speaking, my mother vanished from her location, appearing behind the man she called Alphonse. Amazing. I couldn't even see her move. My thoughts rang as I witnessed her standing in front of me, but behind the man in our midst. Wait.
He pleaded.
However, before he could struggle or move, my mother interlocked her arms around his, dragging him up with her might and bent backward, crashing him into the ground.
A mighty suplex. Bam.
Were my eyes deceiving me?
Absolutely not.
I had no idea how my prim and proper mother was able to achieve such a feat, even with the long gown she wore and her seemingly slender arms. She had never displayed such monstrous strength and agility the whole time I have known her. Dragging the stranger she called Alphonse, she bent backward and flung him to the ground in a mighty suplex, causing a loud noise to reverberate in my ears. Wah dash? I could only mutter, seeing as my eyes barely followed her movements. The man's head was planted to the ground, and his eyes had turned white while his mouth foamed. It appeared that her sudden action had sent him into a state of unconsciousness instantly. My mother, sure is scary. Ah, it still hurts. Did you really have to go that far, Anna? Alphonse grumbled while cracking his sore neck. After the incident, mother ordered the maids to carry the unconscious man to the guest lounge, where she told me to come as well. Of course, she had paused to ask how I was doing and if it hurt anywhere, but I was more concerned about her proximity to me than any other thing. Don't try feigning affection to me now, you brute. My mind rang, unable to separate the current image I had of my mother at the moment. Still, as a master of acting, an art I had cultivated for the 7 years of my life, I reverted to my childish nature and gave her a sweet and warm smile.
I'm okay, Mum.
Of course, this did the trick as she tightly embraced me, suffocating me with her enormous chest. Just break all my bones, will you? After the maids began taking Alphonse up, mother followed behind them, while I followed behind her. I swear, I was gulping the whole time. It wasn't a pleasant experience. After we settled in the lounge, a veranda-like area, with an open view of the garden, which was filled with lush breeze and a pleasant aura, I was unable to enjoy any of these thanks to the woman I called my mother. Alphonse, you can wake up now. My mother spoke calmly, lightly tapping the unconscious man who was already placed on the chair. For a man appearing to be in his 50s, he sure looked miserable now. He should have known who he was messing with. I guess he has learned his lesson now. Alphonse did not budge, most likely due to being immersed in the unconscious state my mother had put him in. It hadn't been very long since her assault, so patience was a given in situations like this, or so I thought.
Oi, Alphonse.
Don't keep me waiting. My mother yelled, using her elbow to hit his stomach. Gark! The man sprung back to life in recoil to that attack.
Ah.
Even though I wasn't the one that was hit, I tightly gripped my guts in reaction to the display of violence exhibited by my mother. Annabelle, take it easy. The man groaned, mumbling some curses to himself. Oh, what was that? He instantly froze the instant my mother asked, drawing her face near his. Her scary smile and chilly aura made even me tremble. What happened to the warm and kind mother I know and love?
A kid is here, Alphonse.
No swearing. She stared firmly.
All right.
Geez, he mumbled, rubbing his neck, which appeared to be sore from the suplex he received. Sorry about that. It appeared that he had just made an apology, but I was confused about who it was directed to.
Me or my mother? Ahem.
She coughed, sending him into another state of shock. It was amazing how my mother, who was barely even 25 years old, was able to command the actions of a man over twice her age. I mean, Jared, I would like to apologize for my earlier behavior. That was uncalled for. He smiled, finally looking in my direction. A small smile formed on my face since he was paying attention to me at long last.
It's fine.
I'm just curious as to why you did that. Magic pressure is dangerous, sir. I made sure to speak in a respectful tone, showing the etiquettes I had grown to learn. It appeared learning it in my past life as well as my new one would not be a waste, after all.
Oh?
You're a fine young lad, aren't you? Polite as well. Are you sure you're Anna's son? Before he could complete his sentence, my mother jerked him in the gut once again, causing him to bowl over and groan while holding his stomach. You never change, do you?
Shut it, Alphonse.
At this point, I was getting curious. Just what was the relationship between my mother and this weirdo? Answer the kid. I'm also curious. My mother gave a menacing smile. A bead of sweat fell from his forehead as he slightly coughed, pretending to clear his throat. Well, simply put, it was a test.
A test?
Now that was somewhat unexpected, but at the same time, it started to make sense to me. So that's what it was. Sigh, why did I even call for you? Anna groaned, shaking her head. It appeared my mother knew what this man's test was all about. Even I was already having a faint guess.
Haha.
Well, I had to make sure. After getting a letter from you, requesting me to be his tutor, I still had to confirm if he was worth teaching. Alphonse answered.
Ouch, that hurt.
You mean, my words weren't enough for you? My mother responded almost immediately. I am bound to my personal code, you know? Besides, he's your son. Of course, there would be bias in your words. He spoke back, maintaining a gentle smile throughout. I could understand his perspective. I only awakened at the age of 7, way behind by normal standards. Plus, it wasn't as though I had a high aptitude, to begin with. I don't know what the content of Annabelle's letter stated, but she being my mother, might have somewhat embellished my capabilities.
And?
After your test, what do you think now? My mother's voice suddenly cut into my thoughts. I looked at the man Alphonse and at my mother, who gave a somewhat knowing smile. Not only was he able to withstand my magic pressure, but he also made his own to counter it. I have never seen such an exceptional magic user at such a young age. I have no doubt about it now. Your letter was spot on.
Oh?
I was somewhat happy to hear him say that. It appeared I wasn't as bad as I thought. Plus, rationally speaking, an immature awakened couldn't learn how to create magic pressure instantly. But I had my years of experience and practice in mana manipulation to thank for that. Alphonse looked at me, nodding his head in approval. Jared is definitely worth teaching. Jared is definitely worth teaching. Alphonse declared, smiling at me.
I beamed in response.
That was definitely a close call. If I hadn't resorted to using my magic pressure, I wonder what his decision would have been. So, let me ask you a question, Jared. I looked at the old man, our eyes interlocked, and I didn't turn away. Instead, I boldly stared at him. Why do you want to study magic? Why do you pursue it? Your mother mentioned to me in her letter that you've always been enthusiastic about it as a kid. Why? Mr. Tutor, those are already 3 questions. Didn't you say you wanted to ask me one? I thought to myself. Still, those 3 only required one answer from me. There has only ever been one reason for any endeavor in magic, ever since my last life and even now. It was so simple that anyone could say it.
But to me, it was reason enough.
I love magic. That's all there is to it. Silence pervaded our midst, as both Annabelle and Alphonse smiled at me. They looked at each other and nodded.
Very well, Jared.
I respect your resolve. Alphonse stood to his feet and approached me. I wondered if I was supposed to stand in situations like this, but before I could come to a decision, he was already before me. Placing his hand on my shoulder, this man spoke. Now, I shall officially take the position of tutor, training and guiding you in the way of magic. I shall be your tutor, and you shall be my pupil. I hope you have no problem with that. I shook my head, standing up as well. I wouldn't have it any other way. My mother, who was still seated, watched the 2 of us. She seemed pleased by the newfound bond between me and my new tutor. Meanwhile, I was still confused about the relationship she had with Alphonse. Now then, let us begin. His voice cut through my thoughts, and my eyes bulged. Hold up, you mean now? I was definitely caught by surprise.
Of course.
Or would you prefer another time? Is that what all your love for magic amounts to?
He grinned in a teasing fashion.
This old man, he dares to look down on me and question my love for magic? I gritted my teeth. From my perspective, he was my junior. The only reason I accorded him with respect was due to the knowledge he possessed, as well as his ability to use magic to a degree I never could.
Still, he was my teacher.
So I would have to endure the humiliation I was going to be receiving, hoping to surpass him one day and then give him a taste of his medicine.
Bring it on. I grinned.
What do you know about magic? Alphonse and I were on the massive field of our manor when he asked me this question. Annabelle excused herself, saying she had other matters to attend to, and left me all alone with Alphonse. Of course, she whispered some words of warning to his ears before leaving. I couldn't hear anything she said since her tone was hushed, but from the paled expression Alphonse gave, it couldn't be good. The field was located in the backyard, filled with nothing but mowed grass. I remember there used to be quite a number of beautiful flowers, a garden for butterflies and pretty insects. Mother must have had them removed in preparation for my training. Now, with nothing but short grass which served as warm cushions for our feet, the vast field was empty. Magic is the ability to cause supernatural phenomena by using the laws of the world, I answered. What fuels magic?
He further asked. Mana. I responded.
Where is mana found? The correct answer would be everywhere. Since mana existed in everything and everyone, it could be said that the whole world was filled with mana. But, I had to restrict how I answered his questions since I wasn't a scholar, but a 7-year-old. Mana is found in our bodies. Upon hearing this, Alphonse let out a huge amount of laughter.
Ha 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 ha.
His voice echoed through the field. I felt embarrassed, like the man was mocking me. It sucked being a kid, but as a patient man with the wisdom of many years stacked up, humiliation was something that I could endure.
What a funny kid.
Well, I can't fault you. You're still only a brat after all. He said, still letting out small bursts of laughter.
Keep laughing.
We'll see who the brat is. Well, you're only half right. Mana exists all around us. In the air, the waters, the lands, this entire world is brimming with mana. I already knew that, genius. My eyes rolled. But I still had to act my age and give my dear teacher the respect and awe he expected. Wow.
Really?
That's amazing. Alphonse made a proud expression as soon as I beamed. Bathing himself in the words of a child, just how petty was this guy?
Hee, of course.
Mana is all around us. However, even though it's all around us, as magic users, we can only use the mana that's inside of us to cast spells.
Of course, he was wrong.
However, I wasn't going to expose the results of my research to him. That's why we have to form our mana core before we become able to use magic. Drawing power from the core, we emit mana and transform them to magic through the use of spells.
He explained. Wow. Amazing.
Was what I replied with. Everything this man was saying were already things I knew. I was impatient, wanting to be thrust into the advanced realm of magic I had no clue about. Still, it was unavoidable that as a kid, I would need to be taught the basics. Now then, it's time to tell you more about the relationship between magic, mana, and spells.
Pay attention, okay?
I'm only going to say this once. My mind was already zoning out. It wasn't even up to an hour, and I was bored already. My tutor's voice faded little by little, vanishing into the background. Ah, how much more do I have to endure? When do we get to the interesting part? And thus, day 1 of magic training with my tutor kicked off in such a manner. My expectations were not met, at least not yet. Still, I had hope. It might take a while, but I wasn't giving up. Magic, everything there was to know about it, would be mine. And now, with my ability to use mana, I would be able to rise above anything I ever achieved in my past life. It has been a few months since I started my lessons with my tutor Alphonse, and now, at long last, I will be having my first actual fight. It was boring for the first couple of weeks when Alphonse began teaching me the basics of magic. They were stuff I already knew, so I just had to endure and hope for a more thrilling curriculum as time passed. Fortunately, my expectations were met. Upon seeing that I caught on quick to his words, and my knowledge was far beyond what he taught me since I made use of my house library, Alphonse acknowledged me and decided to take things to the next level. He began by teaching me to cast staple spells, the basics of spells. While it was still a far cry from the experience I wanted, having practical classes was far better than just sitting and hearing a bunch of stuff I already knew. When it came to knowledge, I was certainly better than Alphonse. However, what he had that I desperately sought was the experience of using magic. And I finally got it.
Fireball, I chanted.
Imagining what I wanted to bring forth, as well as channeling the power from within my mana core, I emitted mana and produced the desired result in the palm of my hand, a stable ball of flames. Amazing, you got it on your first try.
Alphonse beamed.
I was certain that from his perspective, he viewed me as a genius, however that was far from it. It was only easy for me to display such a result since I had a very in-depth idea of how it worked. Plus, even before our practical magic lessons began, I had been practicing on my own while reading various books on basic magic in order to refresh the knowledge I had of them. Of course, things would have been a lot simpler if I used SBLLCRAFD, but I wasn't going to give away my trump card for some petty trick like a fireball. Can we do something more complex?
I asked him.
The faster we progressed with the basics, the closer I would be to performing truly incredible spells. Although everything that was going on was pretty exciting. Fire on the palm of my hand, just like I wanted in the past. This is so wild, so amazing. I'm doing magic.
He 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 he.
I laughed internally. As much as I wanted to do so much more, the little magic I had been able to do was enough to send me into shivers of excitement. Truly, learning and practicing magic are two different things. And so, months after our time together began, it was time to take another drastic step in my magic training. This time, it would be a combination of knowledge and practice, a point where they intersected, a magic battle.
Earth Golem summon, Alphonse chanted.
Immediately, mana particles flowed from his body and affected the ground where we stood. It was no longer covered in little grasses, unlike when we had started. Because of all the time I practiced my magic, the ground had now become bare, having only soil as a covering. From the brown soil emerged rock formations that joined together rapidly. They had the faint glow of mana, clearly being affected by my tutor's spell. The rocks were coming, and by the time they were completely joined together, they formed a golem. The golem was humanoid in shape, though having none of our features and possessing somewhat beefed-up arms and legs. It had no face, but the small rock that signified its head dangled atop its broad shoulders. In size, one could say it was about my height, perfect for sparring. My first battle at 7 years old, let's see how it goes. I beamed, as my body trembled slightly in excitement. My mother was also present, a small distance from the field as she watched what would happen. From the corner of my eyes, I also spotted multiple maids and servants staring excitedly as their young master fought his first opponent. Most of them had worried expressions though. It seemed my excited throbbing got misinterpreted to be quivers of fear. I wasn't scared though. So long as I stuck to what I knew, this golem wouldn't be a challenge. Are you ready, Jared? Alphonse asked, ready to activate the golem to fight me. I stood uprightly, calming my overexcited body, and took a deep breath.
Yeah.
Let's do this. He smiled, snapping his fingers. The golem whirred to life as the small rock on its head suddenly developed two glowing eyes to see. I wasn't surprised. I had seen my fair share of golems and knew how they functioned. Not to brag, but in my past life, I developed many golem designs as well.
Whoosh.
The rock contraption dashed toward me, moving its quick body very nimbly. I smiled, instantly opening up my palms as I focused mana on them.
Fireball.
Throwing the orb of flames at the golem, I leaped backward, preventing it from drawing too close to me.
Boom.
My magic exploded on the golem's body. Smoke emanated from its body as it continued approaching me, seemingly unharmed by my attack. Alphonse sure made it durable.
As expected. I grinned.
I expected this much. Magic Ball was a weak spell. It wouldn't even cause much damage to a sturdy object. Its main strength was in the heat it generated, so when it came to power and impact it was lacking greatly. Fireballs, I chanted, creating two spheres of flames on both my hands and throwing them at my opponent. As they were launched, I ensured to take constant steps backward, creating an even greater distance between us.
Boom. Boom.
The flames hit the golem at multiple angles, causing smoke to emanate from its body. Its body temperature should have risen to a considerable degree.
I smiled.
The spectators weren't too convinced of my victory. Is he panicking? Fireball won't do much good against that golem though. Can't he use something else? Hearing them whisper amongst themselves made me nearly burst out in laughter. Of course, I could easily overpower it with a higher spell, but what would be the point in that? I wanted to savor and enjoy my first battle properly. Plus, there was something I wanted to try. It's about time to wrap things up. It's about time to wrap things up.
I smiled.
I made 3 backflips, creating an even greater distance between myself and the steaming mechanism.
Water balls, I chanted.
Instantly, blue spheres of liquid hovered on both my palms. I launched them at the golem, excited to see the reaction.
Shoo.
A burst of steam suddenly surged from the golem. Immediately the water balls came into contact with it. The white steam covered its immediate area, blinding the sight of the mechanism, while also shrouding it in thick smoke. Not only have I impeded its sight, but one of the weaknesses of rock is water. By increasing the temperature of the rock and pouring water on it, I've allowed the steam to permeate its entire body. Steam is just water in gaseous form, so by allowing the water to cover its whole body, the rock golem will become severely weakened and will slow down. However, I didn't intend on stopping there.
Ice ball, I chanted the final time.
As I created a single orb of freezing particles, a smile formed on my face while watching the steam that was already dissipating. Flinging my arms at my target, I sent the ice ball to the golem, making sure to time when my attack would explode, or rather disperse. And so, as soon as it came into contact with the mist, I initiated its eruption.
BWSSSSHHH.
And so, in the eyes of everyone present, a surprising sight presented itself.
How?
Amazing. Simply incredible. I ignored the words of the maids and servants while looking in the direction of my mother. She had a stunned look, certainly not expecting something like this to be the conclusion of my battle with the golem. My tutor, Alphonse, also had a similar look on his face. Their reactions made all of this worth it. A distance from me, where the golem used to be, was a great cluster of ice, a glacier that was frozen and extended to as wide as the mist covered, while also spreading around like roots. The golem was covered in the ice, entirely immobilized. Though I didn't destroy it, there was no way it could attack anymore. It was easily my victory. As expected, the reactions all added up. How did you do it? Alphonse asked me. The look on his face told me that he was still hung up over the golem I had defeated and the bizarre way I won. So, while we were having lunch, he finally asked the question. I'm also curious, Jared. Won't you tell us? My mother added, flashing me her sweet smile. I suppose I ought to enlighten them. I used the various reactions of the elements to create the final result you saw, I revealed.
You did.
Annabelle repeated, clearly not grasping what I said. Yeah, it's simple really. Fireball lacks power and impact, so it can't damage a rock golem, but the heat it produces makes the golem hot. By launching multiple fireballs at it, the golem reached a satisfactory temperature, which made me use water ball. I continued. They were both amazed by what I did, but continued to listen in silence. The water ball turned into vapor upon coming into contact with the extremely hot golem, and so it covered the golem in steam. As you know, water is a rock golem's weakness. Steam is water in its gaseous form, so I allowed the water to seep into the inner recesses of the golem, while also causing it to spread around its surrounding. Then, by using my final spell, the ice ball, I caused the ice to explode as soon as it touched the steam, sending the frost effect into the water that was already around the area. By freezing the moisture, it turned into a big ice structure, and the water that had seeped into the golem froze as well, making it to entirely turn into ice from the inside and also outside. Most people do not know this, but hot water turns cold quicker than lukewarm water. Using this logic and speeding up the process with magic, the hot steam created by the impact of my water ball with the burning rock golem was frozen at a fast rate. And so that's how I won. Pretty interesting, right? I grinned, taking a bite of the salad I had left unattended. Annabelle looked at Alphonse as they exchanged amazed expressions. The two were incredibly astonished by my resourcefulness and unorthodox methods. They had initially thought I was being random in my attacks, perhaps due to it being my first battle. In fact, it would have been more understandable and natural if that was the case. It was only natural that a person who had no combat experience would panic when faced with the unexpected and make mistakes. However, I did the exact opposite. I correctly analyzed the situation and rightly compensated. But why? Why go through such a roundabout way to defeat the golem? Alphonse suddenly asked. I could indeed have used a much simpler approach, yet I chose the complicated route. Well, the answer was simple. I just wanted to experiment. It was fun seeing such a reaction, don't you think? Rather than being straightforward with magic, it's also good to not be bound by strict spells. It's fun making your own by experimenting with various methods.
I said.
This stunned my mother and tutor. They couldn't believe I would be so open-minded and broad with my perception of magic. And so, from that moment on, they both decided not to take the usual approach with me. My master stopped using the basics to teach me and went more complex. As for my mother, she allowed me full access to our house's library, giving me full access to all the materials I needed to learn and grow.
Just as I planned.
I wowed the adults, and now they were pretty much under a different kind of spell.
My genius spell. Perfect.
Now my real magic training begins. 3 years later. Jared, there are things you need to understand. My tutor, Alphonse, said at the start of one of our lessons. Based on his tone, I knew it was serious, so I paid rapt attention. It was rare to see him so resolved. Maybe he wants to teach me a more advanced spell.
I beamed.
Who wouldn't like the sound of that?
Jared.
You have a lot of potential.
Truly.
I've never seen anyone advance through this amount of knowledge and practice of magic throughout my years.
Oh, don't flatter me.
Let's just be done with the formalities and fork over the special magic you want to teach me. I grinned internally, eyeing my tutor greedily.
You're smart too.
So far, in the 3 years since I've been your tutor, you've surpassed my expectations. Every time, you end up using unconventional means to combine low-level spells and use them in creative ways. Truly, you are exceptional.
Hee, of course.
I'm a great sage with countless magic theories in my head. With the opportunity to practice magic, of course, I would end up creating many combinations. So, old man, hand him over my special magic. I've earned it. So, Jeremy, what do you think about? Alphonse's voice trailed. He appeared hesitant on whether or not to tell me what was on his mind.
Come on, old man.
You can trust me. What do you think about becoming a scholar instead of a mage? As soon as he asked the question, it took a while before I was able to comprehend his words. The bombshell was certainly unexpected.
Scholar?
I asked, a little shaken. Alphonse appeared flustered upon seeing my disappointed face. As one who had overseen my training for so long and knew of my passion for practicing magic, asking me to be a scholar now was a difficult task for him. Jared, this is the dash.
Why?
Why do you think I should be a scholar? I cut his words short with my whisper. After showing him so much of what I could do, training like hell, and even eating up knowledge faster than anyone my age. This old man still thought such a path suited me more than my goal? Jared, the thing is, it's because I'm your tutor that I know, you have no talent in magic.
Alphonse sighed.
Yeah. My heart ached the moment he said that. For some reason, those words hit a core within me that I had long thought was numb. Why, oh why did this feel familiar to the first time I was told that I was inept? You managed to form a mana core at 7 when others succeeded at age 5. However, even though you finally have a mana core, advancing beyond this stage is difficult. In a few years after training with magic, your core should have started experiencing some changes. Alphonse explained. I knew what he was talking about. Mana cores have various colors depending on grade, and as a magic user, it is one of your duties to advance your core to the highest possible grade. There are limits to how far one can go based on talent. So, that's what this is all about. Jared, you're already 10 years old. Even though you got a late awakening, by now a yellow color should have begun to form in your mana core. Yet, Alphonse stated, looking worried. I understand now. It appeared I was too entrapped in magic that I failed to notice the worries of my tutor. Truly, my case was something anyone would be worried about. Normally, at 5 I would have had a white mana core, then by my current age, I should have partially developed a yellow core. For geniuses, it wasn't impossible to have fully advanced to the yellow core stage. Yet, I hadn't even shown the slightest sign of improvement. I know you've always wanted to be a mage, utilizing magic actively, but that journey will be cut short due to the unfairness of the situation. You should have realized it yourself. Your mana core, your mana capacity, they're below normal standards. Alphonse clenched his fist as he spoke. I could tell that it was hard for him to tell me these things. The expression on his face and the way his voice quivered all showed that he was truly sorry for doing this. To him, he's bashing the dreams and hopes of a child. I understood all his points perfectly. But I know you might be skeptical, but the scholar profession is highly revered. It used to be discriminated against, but, after Lewis Griffith, the great sage emerged with his countless theories that revolutionized magic, they have become more revered and influential. This guy, he doesn't know that he's using myself as an example. Jared, I somehow see the great sage in you. It appears that both of you think alike. Do you know what you told me one time? I can't forget it, since it was exactly the line I read from one of the great sages' treatises. Crap. This guy is catching on. He said, magic is more than just a set of strict laws. It can be tweaked and altered to suit any purpose. That is the very meaning of evolution.
Gulp. I messed up.
Why did I have to say the exact words I wrote down? I was just speaking normally at that time. To be honest, I have always admired that great man Jared. And for me to see him in you is something you can take as an achievement. That's why I know you can do it. You'll succeed greatly as a scholar.
He is me, dumbass.
I know I can succeed as a scholar. I already did so in my past life. Still, Alphonse made a lot of sense. If I were to pursue the scholar path, there would be little need to practice magic, but more emphasis on study, research, and discovery. With just my SBLLCRAFD, I would be able to change the world once again. My success was already pretty much guaranteed.
However. So, what do you say, Jared?
Don't you want to dash?
Nope.
I sharply responded. Just think about it a little dash.
Nope.
I repeated. What this man was asking of me, even though it was the logical thing to do, I was never going to choose that path.
Why?
Because I was already one in my past life. I had even reached the summit, the pinnacle of any scholar, and achieved the great sage title. Still, at the end of my life, I felt empty. It was the regret that made me wish for magic, and miraculously, I ended up being given a second chance at it. There was no way I would choose to relive my past.
Thank you, tutor, for your counsel.
However, I know what I want. So, instead of trying to look for an alternative. Alphonse was looking flustered, trying to decipher what I, the usually logical one, was thinking. A wide grin formed on my face as I stared at him with my own resolve. Why don't we make a bet? Why don't we make a bet? I asked, grinning at the flustered mage. He must be thinking that I'm making a desperate attempt here, but let's see if he'll bite. What kind of bet?
He asked. Perfect. He took the bait.
Set a standard. You said I'm way behind my peers, correct?
Why, yeah.
Your magic capacity and growth are 2 dash.
Then, set a standard.
In 2 years, I should conclude my training with you. Tell me a spell that anyone by that age will be able to cast, and if I don't meet up to that standard when I turn 12, I'll become a scholar. My declaration stunned Alphonse. The expression he made actually hurt me a little. I'm not crazy, old fart. My mind rang. Come on, there's nothing to lose. I'll keep practicing magic, you'll keep teaching me, and I'll keep learning as much as I can. Even as a scholar, it's good to have deep roots in the knowledge of magic, as well as basic magic usage. Don't you think so? I smiled, trying to convince him. Welp, I didn't have magic usage in the past, but I managed to reach the top. Let's hope he doesn't bring that up. But didn't the great sage not have any dash?
Ah, he did.
I'm not the great sage, okay? I have mana at least. It'll be a waste if I don't train it to an extent. Plus, we've already started my magic training. It's been 3 years now. What's 2 more years? Alphonse seemed to see some reason in my words, which was a good thing. If he had proved to be thick-skulled, I don't know what else I could have said in order to convince him to keep teaching a hopeless case like myself. Okay, so if you don't produce the result I want in 2 years, you'll become a scholar?
Yep.
And a badass one at that. I grinned confidently in response. That won't happen though. But let's give him hope. Alphonse smiled at my confidence, a little relieved that I hadn't broken down from having my dream shattered before me.
All right then. Fair enough, dash.
Boo it if I win. If I do manage to reach the target in 2 years, you'll teach me a rare spell. I declared, pointing at him with seriousness written all over my face. There's no way I'm missing out on some extra goodness. Alphonse burst out in laughter the moment I said this. Was it perhaps the amusement gained from watching an immature boy speak? This old man was looking down on me again.
Fine then. Deal.
He smiled, stretching his hand toward me.
Hey, deal.
I grinned, I stretched mine too, and we shook our hands. A moment of silence enveloped the area, as master and pupil looked into each other's eyes, determined to win. Knowing Alphonse, he would raise the standard pretty high, but that didn't matter. No matter what he threw at me, I was going to succeed. Well, then, what do I tell your mother? Alphonse sighed, suddenly breaking the silence.
I knew it.
So Annabelle was an accomplice too. It all made sense now. This traitorous tutor. So he sided with my doting mother in the end. No one really thinks I can pull it off, Well, they were in for a surprise. After all, tonight, I would finally form my second mana core. Everywhere finally got darkened as night crept in, the perfect moment for a peaceful meditation. I remembered Alphonse's words, how concerned he was about my aptitude. What everyone around me failed to grasp was that no one was more concerned about my growth than I was. I already realized that no matter how many innovative combinations I made to a basic spell, even if it ended up mimicking the effects of a more powerful spell, it was still not powerful enough to rival advanced spells. To become truly powerful, I not only needed great combinations, but also great power and skills to go along with it. Not counting my spellcraft technique, which I was saving as a trump card, my magic usage was really on the poor side. My mana pool was below average, and just as my tutor said, there appeared to be no growth within my core. However, these effects weren't unforeseen, nope, they were caused by me.
Hugh, it's a lovely night.
I should begin. I took a deep breath, carefully inhaling and exhaling fresh, cool air. I activated the mana core within me, causing my body to faintly glow. Many people think that a white mana core is only the beginning of a magic user's journey, and one should progress as fast as possible to the next stage. However, they're wrong. The white core stage is a foundation. As such, others are built from it. The mistake everyone makes is assuming they need to advance to the yellow stage as soon as possible. I thought this perception would change, but even now in the future, it remained the same. There was one thing everyone overlooked, and now it would be the basis for another card that I will exclusively have under my sleeve. And that is, possessing multiple mana cores. It's almost done, just a few more particles, and I'll be done with my second mana core. It started as suspicion, then after a while, it became much more. Even in my past life, I often pondered on the subject. However, it seemed that my line of thought was so unconventional that no one else seemed to reason that way. Everyone had a set pattern, and the people I could reason with were already down that path. Is it possible to have more than one magic core? It was a simple question that kept ringing in my head. Unfortunately, I could not prove or test this theory since the elements needed for it to succeed were non-existent. In essence, the theory was fated to fail before it even started. However, upon my rebirth and after forming my mana core, everything became perfectly clear. It was indeed possible. The white core grade is the basic foundation, and from it, other grades are formed, as they are layered over it, like onions. The white core remains the innermost layer, while others flow from around it. As multiple layers form, concepts such as specialties begin to exist in the mana of a magic user. Magic users become more attuned to a particular specialty or field as they advance in their core grade. As a result, they're unable to practice advanced magic in other fields. I felt that was wrong. If I was to become a true magic user, I wanted to be able to use any and all forms of magic at my disposal, and not be bound by my own core, which was a restriction. Then, in order to achieve this, there was only one option, one path to take: forming many mana cores. By forming multiple cores, a person would be able to have more than one specialty. The possibilities were endless. That was when I started researching. That's right. My 3 years of magic training weren't merely restricted to Alphonse's teachings. I conducted personal sessions and finally, after so much time invested in research and personal discovery, I found it. With this, I finally proved my theory. I grinned widely. White mana core grade is the foundation. Other core grades form the layers. However, as other core grades start to form, even though power drastically increases, specialties arise. These three factors were immutable truths when it came to the concept of magic. However, a loophole existed, and I was fortunate enough to discover it after tireless efforts in research. If I establish my white core grade, then I no longer need to taint or advance it with another grade. Instead, by leaving the foundation as it is, pure, I can begin forming another magic core somewhere else. White grade is the accumulation of mana particles in the body. It is pure, without any special elements. As time goes on, the mana becomes mixed in with other elements, which results in specialties. By separating the two, I discovered that there was no point in tainting my first mana core with any element, since it was meant to remain a pure core while I formed others. The reason I was never able to succeed in proving the multiple mana core theory in my past life was that the magic users who were competent at the time all had at least a yellow mana core, already tainted with another element. What I actually required was a pure white core in order to produce another independent mana core. Since the only ones who had such cores were little children, there was no way I was ever going to succeed. Because, after the culmination of my research concerning this topic, one fact was absolute. Only white core grades can ensure the effective creation of another mana core.
Why?
Because mana particles in the body naturally flow toward the core and expand it, making it grow over time. To create another core, one has to redirect the flow. I was able to intentionally speed up my awakening process since I knew how to direct the flow of my mana, but it would be even more difficult to do so for a second core while already possessing a first, since the core would draw in the mana particles like a magnet and try to expand. I have to admit, I reached a block when I realized this, and nearly gave up on my endeavor. But in my slump, a memory returned to me, an experience that had occurred 2 weeks after my birth. The priest who was in charge of my naming ceremony and quickening ritual had sent a pure wave of mana into me which resonated with my mana particles and quickened them, allowing for a faster absorption rate at the time.
Bingo!
I screamed the moment I grasped what this meant for me. I felt nearly foolish for letting months slip by me, yet failing to realize something so simple. Using my already formed core, I could quicken the mana particles in my body and use their energized state to form another core. While emitting mana, a core cannot absorb mana at the same time. It would be like pushing and pulling simultaneously, which isn't possible. Therefore, by constantly releasing pure mana throughout my body, I would constantly be quickening my mana particles, while increasing the formation rate of my second mana particle. The process was fast, unbelievably fast. I had actually made so much progress that it began to materialize. Yes. That was when I realized that it was absolutely possible. I can make more mana cores. Not just 1 or 2, but as many as my body can handle. The best part about this was that the more mana cores I had, the easier it would be to make a new one, since the quickening process would be more effective and the formation rate would in turn be faster. That was how I started, and in barely 2 years, I formed my second mana core. It would have taken a lot less time, but since I had to focus a lot on training, as well as keep up my study, learn noble etiquette, and take many lessons for my education, I had barely enough time for myself. Still, I relentlessly kept at it. And so, here we are, the moment of truth. 200 more, 50 more, 1 more. Shi-ing. A warm, bright light enveloped me, similar to the sensation I felt the first time I awakened. I felt my entire body throb with a rush of power and pleasure. Unlike before, where my stomach was the point of formation, same with other magic users, I made my second mana core's location in my head.
My brain, to be precise.
The strategic use of such a position would be indispensable to my ambitions.
Hiya.
I feel so refreshed and exhausted at the same time. I heaved, crumbling on my bed. My body was covered with perspiration, and even though I was nearly naked, my entire underwear was soaked with sweat. However, I ignored such petty details. "This is amazing," I whispered. Feeling the 2 mana cores resonate within me gave off a different kind of vibe. It was a world apart from just having one. If I make more, I wonder how it would feel. The thought sent a smile to my face. That's right. I had succeeded in the impossible. However, this was only the beginning. To truly rise above the mediocre and surpass all my peers, I needed to form my third mana core. I won't settle for anything less. Since I managed to form my second mana core after 2 years, my third wasn't going to take that long. But seeing as Alphonse was dead serious about my lack of talent, it was certain that he would be spending more time training me than usual, plus my lessons in other areas were becoming more complex and time-consuming as time went on. In only 2 years, would I really have enough time to make the third core? Hee, sounds like a challenge. I grinned to myself, looking at the ceiling of my room. It was a risky venture, and the next 2 years would be the most hectic time of all, but the results were undeniably assured, and if I pulled through, when I pulled through, I would be in an entirely different class. I'm no natural genius, all right. But I can make myself into one. 2 years later. Are you ready, Jared? A smile formed on my face. The moment of truth, after my bet with Alphonse, was finally here. This will be our last session together. Therefore, as was our agreement back then, you will show me a feat worthy for a magic user your age if you want to advance further. Alphonse stated, sternly looking at me. And if I don't, I'll become a scholar instead. Yeah. I know. My voice sounded, echoing through the field of training designated for us. Somehow, a tinge of nostalgia wafted through me as I realized that we had been using this same spot for 5 years. Every day, continuously without fail, to think this was the last day. Jared, it's not too late to pull out now, Alphonse said. It felt insulting to hear that, but I understood. Alphonse most likely said that out of consideration for me. Since this would be the last training session I would be having, every member of the household was present. The servants, housekeepers, employees. Heck, even my mother watched from her esteemed seat. Father can't make it this time because of his duties, but I'll do so well that the news reaches him. I smiled at my tutor and nodded, giving him my usual confident look. I wasn't about to let down this man who had painstakingly taught me for so long.
Fine.
Since you're determined, Jared, I'll have you engage in a magic duel. If you perform up to my expectations, I'll deem you fit to pursue the path of a magic user.
He stated.
That sounded good to me. What will you be conjuring this time?
A golem? An elemental?
I responded, excitement showing in my eyes. Alphonse shook his head while giving a mysterious yet scheming grin.
No, Jared.
Your opponent this time, one who will end your training and cause you to graduate from your 5-year lesson, is none other than your tutor himself.
Me.
My eyes bulged in shock. This was unexpected. I'll be facing off against Alphonse himself? The grin he gave made me realize that this was planned, premeditated from the time we made our bet. I was also certain that my mother was in on this since the both of them wanted to ensure I became a scholar. Their smoldering love is too excessive. However, if they thought that something like this would break my spirit, they were dead wrong.
Hugh, now this is exciting.
I wouldn't have it any other way. Alphonse was stunned to see me maintain my confidence and even looked forward to it. He gave me a nod and smiled proudly.
You've not changed, Jared.
Truly, you're one interesting kid. Now then, show me what you have. Of course, just give the signal. I answered almost immediately. We both smiled at each other, ready to begin the duel. Alphonse is strong, I know that much. The mana pressure he emitted ever since we first met is still burned into my memory. However, compared to the weak boy who had just awakened his mana core, I have changed exponentially. I had been worried that I wouldn't be able to fully test my new power no matter the final test Alphonse gave me, but this was the perfect opportunity. Let's see how much I've grown. Current status.
Name, Jeremy Lewis.
Age, 12 years old.
Mana core grade, white.
Number of mana cores, 3.
Begin. Alphonse declared.
Without wasting any time, I cast my spells silently, launching several fireballs at my tutor.
Yep.
Silent casting is a thing. A dozen balls of flames burned through the air as they approached him at a fast pace, but Alphonse was too quick for any to hit him. Enhancing his body with magic, the crazy old man glided away from all of them, swiftly avoiding them as he lunged at me. The fireballs exploded behind him, and in a few moments, he would reach my location. Usually, at this moment one would feel a sense of panic, since it was bad news for an opponent to close the distance on you when you're a mage. However, for me, it only proved to be more exciting. A wide smile formed on my face as I cast another spell. Instantly, I used magic to affect the earth surrounding me, except for where I stood, creating a quicksand in an instant. Sinking ground. Alphonse's legs got caught up in the sinking earth, but he didn't even appear fazed at all. This gave me a little window to create more distance between the two of us, though, so I jumped away from him, using wind magic to strengthen my leap. All of these were basic magic, possible for anyone who had formed a magic core.
Che, cheeky kid.
Alphonse grinned, using wind magic as well to fly away from the ground and launch himself toward me.
Ground spikes.
Instantly, many earth structures came from all around me, creating sharp projections of the earth. Alphonse used wind magic, one which I suspected to be wind slice, to cut down the rocks in an instant, while he chased after me. He's holding back, I know, since he wants to simulate a realistic battle. After all, if he goes all out, I won't be able to stand a chance, or so he thinks. I decided to kick things up a notch. Creating about half a dozen fireballs and half a dozen water balls simultaneously, I launched them at Alphonse at once.
That's pointless,
he stated, dodging them with ease. I saw from his expression that he was amazed by my actions though. After all, an amateur couldn't create spells of different elements at the same time. It's a good thing I have 3 separate mana cores working at the same time. Of course, I realized none of my spells were going to hit him, so they weren't exactly targeting him to begin with. The opposing elements hit one another, causing an eruption of mist. I quickly leaped out of the area of impact since I was further from it and secured my landing while watching the outcome.
Perfect. I grinned.
Instantly, the mist cleared as Alphonse used wind magic to disperse everything around him. Did you really think your ice magic formation would be effective on me? He asked, referring to the trick I had used to defeat his golem in the past. I had perfected it already, and was able to use it more freely since I had more mana cores. However, that wasn't my goal. Who knows, maybe?
I smiled.
Alphonse shook his head and sighed. Even now, why do you appear to be having a good time? Well, That's because I was about to pull off something very exciting. It was only a matter of time. Our fight continued, with me avoiding a direct confrontation, while using basic magic to trap him for a short moment. Now then, let's try this.
I grinned.
I created over a dozen fireballs, and a score of water balls, ensuring the temperature of the resulting clash would be more attuned to the cold nature of water, and not heat.
This again?
I'll just dodge it and dash. I instantly launched them, not allowing Alphonse to finish his statement. However, unlike before, my aim was placed very high, sending the projectiles into the air. The elements crashed, creating a cloud of cold fog above our heads. What are you doing? Alphonse asked, partly curious and confused by my seemingly random and pointless moves. However, he had been with me for 5 years and oversaw a lot of my magic training, so he was already aware that I didn't do anything without a plan. Deciding that there was no use deliberating over the outcome of my spell, Alphonse appeared to have resolved to end the match before I could activate any more spells. Unfortunately, I had already prepared a large quicksand for him as a treat. While he was focused on my spectacle above, I made another sinking ground spell where he was, causing his movements to be hindered. Wa dash?
He yelped.
This gave me the perfect window to create my next barrage of spells. Mini ice balls. Instantly, tiny portions of ice were formed in multitudes. I launched them at the formation in the sky, further confusing Alphonse. What was my plan? The ice particles burst upon touching the fog, turning into tiny fragments of ice. The end result was a more solidified version of the mist above us, a cloud.
This is just bizarre.
Don't tell me you're experimenting on magic again when we're having a duel. Alphonse spoke, slightly annoyed. He broke out of the quicksand and lunged at me, this time with the intent to finish things entirely. However, it was too late. Bringing my fingers together, I rubbed my thumb with my middle one, making a
snap. And then, the unbelievable happened.
The clouds instantly darkened, and a bright flash appeared from within it, causing Alphonse to look above him as a result of the shocking occurrence. Grinning at another window of hesitation he displayed, I cast binding spells on my dearest tutor to slow him down. Strong bind, earth bind, sinking ground. Many whips of white light wrapped themselves around him, and the earth brought forth many of its constraints to hold him. The ground began to sink beneath him once again, creating a triple-layered trap all at once. Alphonse was stunned by this trap, and as he tried breaking free, my little gift for him was prepared.
Fall.
The flashes of light from the darkened cloud instantly descended in a rush, lunging at Alphonse rapidly. Kra-a-kak. The lightning strike finally connected, crashing into the ground as it made deafening sounds of thunder, resulting in a massive explosion.
Boom.
Right before my eyes, the destruction spread as I stood at a safe distance. The blinding ray of light, coupled with the cackles of electricity and the sizzling sound of heat melting the earth made me smile happily. Looks like it's a success. However, I didn't account for one fatal error. The explosion kept spreading. Jared, get out of there now. I suddenly heard my mother yell at me. I looked at her with a stunned expression, initially not understanding what she meant. The servants all around, a considerably safe distance from where I was, all looked in horror, and I could see the frightened expression my mother made. Realizing something had gone terribly wrong, I turned my face back to the center of the explosion and saw the approaching danger.
Shit.
My mind rang. The burst of lightning didn't cease, as the charges kept ramming the earth, sending shock waves and bursts of destructive light across the field. The devastating rushes began to approach me at a rapid rate. Seeing the explosion spread, I quickly created 3 layers of protective spells to protect myself from the assault. Earth wall, earth wall, earth wall. Using earth magic was the most efficient way I could ground the lightning bursts directed at me. It was also the most useful defensive measure in this situation. Hopefully, the earth wall has enough capacity to absorb the electrical current.
Apparently, they didn't. Beak. My
defensive rock shields broke apart in the presence of an overwhelming might that was the lightning surge, and in only a few moments, I would be done for. As I watched the brilliantly destructive lightning currents near me, I instinctively knew it was the end. My remaining mana wasn't enough to escape, and I didn't have enough time to use spellcraft. I could have pulled it off probably, but at that moment my mind drew a blank. In essence, I was too terrified to do anything. Jared! I heard my mother call out to me again. Her screams of concern, fear, and desperation rang in my ears. From her distance, there was no way she could reach me in time though.
Shit.
Looks like this is the end.
Whoosh.
Suddenly I heard a whooshing sound, coupled with a blinding light. In a flash, I felt myself being pulled by a force, and taken away from the destruction that ensued. The lightning explosion chased us, myself and whoever was carrying me. Everything was too bright and fast for me to catch with my eyes. SHINNNNGGGGG. A brighter light shone beyond whoever carried me, and suddenly, I saw something magnificent. A barrier, shaped like a massive field of light, covered the lightning explosion, containing it. This is, my mind rang. I had only ever seen it in books, and once in my past life. It was considered to be one of the best defensive spells a mage could use. Safe haven. Finally trapped in the barrier, with no oxidizing element or air particles, the lightning sizzled, and finally ceased, leaving behind an entire field of devastation, charred grounds that emanated smoke, and burning layers of everything within a couple of acres. Jared, are you okay? I heard a voice rouse me from my deep thoughts. It was the same person who had saved me, and I was still locked in his arms. Looking up at him, I saw a distressed expression in his eyes. Why yes, Alphonse, I mumbled, frankly still shaken by the whole thing. This was the first time I had messed up in magic. That's good then. He heaved in relief, putting me on the ground. I planted my heels on the earth, making sure my wobbly legs remained firm in order not to appear weak.
I looked at Alphonse.
He was shrouded in a brilliant light that seemed to enhance his whole body. That must have been how he was fast enough to save me. As for the barrier, Jared. I heard another voice call out to me. It was my mother. Raising my head to the place my mother sat at a high estate, I saw her looking drained. Her face paled, and she seemed to be having difficulty breathing. Our servants quickly tried attending to her, but she stubbornly insisted on calling out to me, and in order to verify my safety. She rushed toward me, even in her weakened state, nearly collapsing. What's going on? I was a little startled. Jared, what the hell was that just now? Alphonse asked suddenly, drawing my attention back to him. I didn't know how I would explain it to him. I suppose this type of magic was overkill, one a 12-year-old wouldn't be able to perform. Still, I must have impressed him with this.
I won. Does that matter?
You've lost the bet, so I smiled, trying to wave off the suspicion that seemed to be building up concerning my abilities.
Who cares about that?
Alphonse's voice suddenly got deeper and more menacing. The look in his eyes startled me. The usual playful and cheerful demeanor was gone. He had a deep glare, coupled with veins sticking out of his face as he clenched his fist. I could hear him gritting his teeth, making me feel an odd sense of unease around him. But I showed an impressive result. Alphonse should be dazzled and amazed right now. Yet, why does he look dash? Do you have any idea what you've done? He asked in rage. I was right, after all. My tutor, Alphonse, was angry.